Napoleon, the child of an island. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica. At the time, Corsica had only just become part of France. For most people, this change meant little. But for Napoleon, it defined his entire life. He grew up feeling like an outsider, too Corsican to be French, and too French to be truly Corsican. From an early age, Napoleon learned what it meant to be alone. His family was noble in name, but poor in reality. This allowed him to attend French military schools, yet it also made him different. When he was sent to the mainland of France, his accent betrayed him immediately. Other students mocked the way he spoke. They laughed at his small stature, his seriousness, and his silence. Napoleon rarely fought back with words. Instead, he read. While other boys spent their evenings talking, joking, and dreaming of comfort, Napoleon buried himself in books. History, mathematics, geography, and above all, stories of great commanders filled his mind. Alexander the Great became his secret companion. Julius Caesar became his silent teacher. He learned one lesson above all others. History is shaped by those bold enough to seize the moment. Napoleon graduated from military school as an artillery officer. Artillery was not glamorous. It required calculation, patience, and precision. But it suited him perfectly. Guns, angles, distances, these were things that could be controlled. And Napoleon believed deeply in control. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, chaos consumed the nation. Kings fell. Power shifted daily. Fear ruled the streets of Paris. For many, this was a time of terror. For Napoleon, it was opportunity. The old world was collapsing, and the new one had not yet decided who would rule it. Napoleon rose quickly not because of noble blood, but because he understood something others did not. He understood that speed and decisiveness mattered more than tradition. In battle, he moved faster than expected. He struck where enemies were weakest. He used artillery not as support, but as the center of his strategy. His first great moment came during the siege of Toulon. Royalist forces, supported by foreign navies, threatened the revolution. Napoleon proposed a daring plan. Many doubted him. He was young. He was unknown. But his plan worked. The enemy fleet was driven out. Toulon fell. Napoleon was promoted. More importantly, he was noticed. In Paris, the revolution began to devour its own children. Politicians fell as quickly as generals rose. Violence became routine. Fear became policy. In 1795, a royalist uprising threatened the revolutionary government. Paris stood on the edge of civil war. Once again, Napoleon was called upon. This time, he did not hesitate. He placed cannons in the streets and fired grape shot into the advancing crowd. The rebellion was crushed in hours. The government was saved. Some called it brutal. Napoleon called it necessary. From that day forward, France knew his name. Soon after, Napoleon was given command of the Army of Italy. It was a broken force, poorly supplied, underpaid, and demoralized. Many generals would have complained. Napoleon inspired. He spoke to his soldiers not as expendable tools, but as partners in destiny. He promised them glory, honor, and reward. He led them across the Alps into Italy, moving so quickly that enemy armies could not react in time. Against all odds, he defeated stronger forces again and again. Each victory made him more confident. Each success convinced him further that he was meant for greatness. By the age of 30, Napoleon was a national hero. And heroes do not remain obedient for long. France's rulers grew nervous. Napoleon was popular. Too popular. To remove him from politics, they sent him far away on a campaign to Egypt. Officially, it was to strike at British interests. Unofficially, it was exile disguised as ambition. Napoleon accepted eagerly. In Egypt, he won battles and lost fleets. His army was cut off from France. Disease spread. Supplies vanished. Yet even in failure, Napoleon controlled the narrative. He portrayed himself as a bringer of civilization, a student of history, a man larger than circumstance. Then, quietly, he left his army behind. He returned to France. France, once again, was unstable. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup. With soldiers at his side and confidence in his voice, he dismantled the government almost without resistance. The revolution that had begun with cries for liberty ended with one man in control. Napoleon became first consul. In time, he crowned himself emperor. He did not claim divine right. He claimed merit. He claimed order. He claimed that France needed him. And for a while, he was right. As emperor, Napoleon reformed France. He created laws that still exist today. He centralized power, rewarded talent, and demanded loyalty. He built roads, schools, and institutions. He turned chaos into structure. But Napoleon was never satisfied with peace. War was his natural state. Across Europe, his armies marched. Kings fell. Borders were redrawn. Napoleon placed his family on foreign thrones, believing loyalty could be inherited. For years, he seemed unstoppable. Until he made his greatest mistake. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia. He brought with him the largest army Europe had ever seen. But size could not defeat distance. The Russians retreated, burning their own land behind them. Winter came early. Supplies vanished. Cold and hunger killed more soldiers than battle ever did. Napoleon reached Moscow. It was empty. Soon, it was burning. He waited for surrender that never came. When he finally retreated, his army collapsed. What had begun as a march of glory ended as a march of ghosts. Napoleon returned to France defeated. The world sensed weakness. In 1814, his enemies closed in. Paris fell. Napoleon abdicated and was sent into exile on the small island of Elba. For most men, this would have been the end. For Napoleon, it was merely a pause. Less than a year later, he escaped. When he returned to France, soldiers sent to arrest him instead joined him. Without firing a single shot, Napoleon reclaimed power. History calls this period the 100 Days. It ended at Waterloo. At Waterloo, Napoleon faced a united Europe. His old brilliance was still there, but time had taken its toll. His enemies were cautious. His army was tired. The battle was lost. This time, there would be no return. Napoleon was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, far from Europe, far from power. There, he spent his final years walking, reading, and remembering. He once said, "A soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon. But in the end, even emperors are only men." Napoleon died in 1821. He left behind no throne, no empire. But he left behind something stronger. A legend.